profitability of the NBA. He is an asset of the NBA. He's not a leader of the black community. He's not even a member of the black masses anymore. And so they say, well, you're breaching your contract. And if he didn't breach his contract, he has a right to sue them in the court. And if he sues them in the court and he's successful, guess what he's going to do? You think he's going to come and redistribute those resources to the community? He's going to rejoin and commit class suicide? Let Kyrie grow. Woo! People are acting like Kyrie is growing. Let me tell you something about what Kyrie is pushing. The black Hebrew myth, the black Hebrew Israelites, there are several sects of them. There are relatively benign sects of the black Hebrews who sell vegan, like Soul Vegan was ran and operated by a black Hebrew cult. I know several brothers and sisters that are members, former and members of that cult. And you have various black Hebrew sects. But the most ones you see up and down the street, the black Hebrew Israelites dressed up in the cosplay with the sabers and axes. They march up and down the street wearing purple and gold and chanting. Those guys are one of the so-called militant sects. But here's the thing that unites all black Hebrew Israelites. And if you go to the Bro Diallo podcast, I've interviewed a long-standing brother I've known for 20 years now. Brother I've known for 20 years. We worked together on various community projects. We worked together on, everything from poetry readings to organizing freedom fighters events. Had an amicable working relationship, but he's a longtime black Hebrew Israelite. And I invited him on to discuss the fundamental ideas. The one thing, there are several things, but the black Hebrew sects, whether they're the foaming at the mouth militants or the civil tofu cooking, selling cult, is that, number one, they believe that black people of the African diaspora are one of the 12 tribes of Israel, that we are not Africans, that we were never integrated, or our ancestors were never integrated or a part of African society. We were an out group. So we are not Dinka, Wolof. We don't come from ancestral Ghana, Nigeria, west, up and down the west coast in Central Africa. That we were people who came from the Holy Land of Israel, and due to various calamities imposed on us by God, we traveled as a cohesive group that never intermingled and never intermarried with the other Africans, with those goddamn Africans. Go up to the Hebrews when they're screaming at the street and say, hey, you're an African, and see if they don't curse you out. And we remained isolated. And then when the white man came to the shores of Africa and said, we want some slaves, the Africans said, well, we have some non-Africans over here who aren't part of us. They pray to Yahweh. They are part of this tribe. And guess what? You take them. So Europeans did not catch various members of various tribes, various nations, various ethnic groups across various regions of Africa. Everybody they brought were already in bondage and isolated on the African continent, waiting in these little pods for Europeans to put us on slave ships and bring us here. So we are not Africans. We weren't Africans when we were on the continent, and they did not bring Africans over here in bondage. That's number one part of their belief. Number two, that bondage was ordained by God, that God made a covenant with Abraham. God made a covenant with Moses, and his descendants, the black Hebrews, broke that law and broke the covenant. And God warned us, if you do not keep law, you are my chosen people. You are the elect of God. And if you do not keep your covenant and uphold the law, I will put you in bondage to your enemies. I will deliver you unto your enemies as divine righteous retribution. Black enslavement, the rape, the mutilation, the murder, the forced labor, the psychological trauma over generations was God's divine righteous retribution. The people who came to rape and murder and torment us were doing the work that God has assigned them to do. They were divinely driven and divinely inspired, and they are divinely justified. We not only deserved what happened to us, but we should thank God for doing it to us to help wake us up, to return us to the law. That's what every single Black Hebrew Israelite believes. And they got that rhetoric from the white Christians, because the white Christians said, these people are cursed by God. And we are literally doing the work of God, bringing them into bondage, thus bringing them the light of civilization. It's the exact identical rhetoric. The only difference between white racists using the divine justification and the Black Hebrew Israelites using the divine justification is literally the Black Hebrew Israelites said God did it because he loved us, and the white racists said God did it because he hated us. Other than that, their rationale and justifications are literally identical. And this is what Kyrie Irving is posting on the internet. And y'all defending him from the retribution of the Jews when we should be stomping that motherfucker out our goddamn self for pushing this bullshit. And let me tell you something about this cult, the Black Hebrew Israelite cult. It is an Old Testament cult. They believe that the Old Testament law is still sanctified and in play. They believe in Jesus Christ. They believe that the black man, Jesus Christ, came as a revolutionary, but they do not. They hold to the point where Jesus said, I did not come to replace the law. I came to enforce the law. So they hold to the tenets of the Old Testament. And if you read the Old Testament, it is a goddamn horror story. These men believe that they have a right to kill disobedient children. They believe that women are their property. These Black Hebrew Israelite cults march up and down the street, and you notice no women march with them. When they're out speaking on the street, no women can speak with them. When they're in their synagogues, the women aren't allowed to speak. The women aren't allowed to join the ministry. The women are property. They are subordinate, submissive property that can and justifiably be violently silenced if they step out of their ordained role that Yahweh has imposed on them. And throughout, if you just look at the news, throughout the country, these Black Hebrew Israelite men are murdering their women. Committing violent abuse of their wives. Some of the sects allow for multiple wives, some don't. Most of them do. This is the cult. This is the ideology. This is the behavior that Kyrie Irving posted online. And let me tell you something else about cults. Cults tend to do the most damage to the communities and the demographics that they draw their members from. Even if it's a racist cult. Like the Mormon is a Christian sect, is a Christian cult. The Mormon has an enormous body count. It is a bloodthirsty, murderous cult. But the majority of their victims are other Mormons, white people. Even though they hate blacks, they taught that black people have no souls. But when you look at the cults, most cults got their body count, their damage, their harm tends to be imposed. So even if you believe like, well, so what if they believe all that? They are militant black men and they claim to be against the government. They claim to be against the white Jews. They claim to be against the white devils. And so even though they have all this sick thoughts, these sick mythological cultist ideology, they claimed in their rhetoric to be anti-white. And I know white men oppress us and all this racism. So if they're anti-white, I'm behind them. But the Nation of Islam, another cult, an Islam